if I can write a song where I could see that happen for someone else, or if we can sing a song where I feel like maybe that's happening for somebody else, that's the very best experience for me in music. Just the idea that we're connecting to something and we're learning something in a way that we maybe couldn't learn any other way. Like I said, maybe not everybody feels or gets that kind of same impression, but boy, that's been a powerful part for me of my whole faith journey at life, is learning through music and hopefully the spirit of the company.
It is time for another episode of the Cultural Hall, and got to give a big shout out on this episode, because this is not just something that has happened overnight. This is, I would say maybe even weeks in the making. I got an email a while back from Diana, who said, we were talking in an Articles of News episode about, first concerts that we ever went to, and she shared with us that her first concert was Three Dog Night, which I think is just an incredible, incredible concert to have be your first concert. In fact, how do you go to another concert after that? Well, out of marital obligation is the answer to that question. Diana is married to Joel McCausland.
McCoslyn, yeah.
McCoslyn, there we go. I should have said that the way that I thought in my head. Joel McCoslin, and Joel McCoslin, should you not recognize him by his name, he's got a partner in crime, Kevin Peay. Should you not recognize them by names, individual, they are Afterglow, and that is what this episode is. Welcome into the Cultural Hall, gentlemen.
Thank you, Richie. Good to meet you and talk to you.
Yeah, and like I said right before we started recording, we'll see if you feel that way at the very end of this thing, if you are grateful that you get to meet me and get a chat. For a certain generation of the church, Afterglow is everything. You say Afterglow, and it is the music of the church that isn't in the hymnal. I would love, in this first block of the Cultural Hall, take me back all those years ago, when this whole Afterglow thing started. How did it start? Why did it start? Why is it Afterglow? What were the rejected names that weren't Afterglow? I need to know those things. Give me the genesis of how you two came together and this was born.
I was in Grove, Utah, 1970.
That will be 7 or 8.
Yeah, that was high school, but we actually met in Unified Math in 7th grade. Joel had a lot of brains. I had a lot of stupor, and we're trying to figure out how in the world I could get some brains. And so he helped me with the mathematical equations of our Unified Math class, and the rest is a little bit history. I went on to do some athletic things. He did too, but he focused a lot on music, and his family was extremely musical. I was rebelling at that point in time. I was not going to sing in a ward choir. I was not going to use music in my life. I just wanted to throw baseballs and shoot basketballs. And so that was pretty much my entire existence until we really kind of followed each other. We found each other or followed each other through high school. Joel got into radio, and I got into baseball and athletics, basketball pretty heavy. And I finished a baseball practice in 1978, my junior year. And I can't remember. I'd gone to the locker room, and for some reason I was headed back to the other part of the building, but I was in my baseball cleats, and I forgot to take them off, was sliding on the tile. The janitor said, take those things off. And I said, okay. So I got my shoes off, and I started walking. I heard this music in the auditorium. Nobody else was around, except I walked into the auditorium. There he was playing a song. And I said, Joel, what are you doing? And he says, well, I'm getting ready to sing for an assembly. And I said, well, that's interesting. What are you singing? And he was singing All By Myself by Eric Carmen. And that was apropos. He was sitting in there all by himself. Sure.
My friends.
Yeah. And so I said, well, that's interesting. Maybe I just ought to come sit down for a minute. I'll put some harmony to it. Now, that was really the first time I'd ever thought to myself, what in the world are you doing? You've rebelled forever. Why in the world would you do this now? But something just felt like I should. So I sang a little harmony to that song, and he ended up inviting me to sing on the assembly that he was practicing for. And boy, that was
kind of a moment, right? You're in front of your friends, and
sure,
okay to do this or not. It's a little bit scary that way. But
yeah, and especially when you have the stigma of being an athletic person, hopefully these stigmas are sort of breaking down a little bit, but
they are.
Normally those two sort of groups in high school especially don't mix. It's like you are the athletic person or you are the arts person. Never the twain shall meet.
Right.
So I got laughed at and scorned for a little bit at practice after that. But anyway, it was one of those turning points for me where I just said, well, laugh and scorn and say what you want. But it felt right and it felt good. And so we moved forward after that. Our senior year, I joined the choir, the debate club. And then interesting enough, we had 4 basketball players came into the choir. And
Could have been a turning point.
it was an interesting senior year where I think a few of the athletes decided, well, I guess I probably might want to think about what my rest of my high school wants to look like. So we had a blast our senior year.
Had a good time. Great choir, great group, a lot of good friends. We stayed in touch with it.
And then we all graduated and off we went. Joel was doing well, keep telling what.
Yeah, what were you doing, Joel?
Well, as we got out of high school, we got a lot of things happening, but one, you got to make money. So I was always looking for a little way to do that. And we had a chance to do some music at restaurants around the Provo-Orem area. We grew up in Pleasant Grove, so we were close by. And we were both at BYU for a time right after high school. And so I played at a place called Jimba's down on Center Street.
Okay.
I think that's, Provo Center Street. And then Kevin and I got a chance to play at a place called Old Dan Tucker's on the kind of the top of the Provo-Orem Hill there. And had some cool experiences there too, just kind of hanging out, doing our thing.
We were singing cover tunes.
Yeah.
And all.
Yeah. One night we're in there doing our thing. And a lot of people coming in it was a Friday night, I think, and they're coming in for dinner with their wife or whatever. This guy stopped by our little piano area and he said, "Hey, you guys ever do firesides? You ever do programs like for church?" And we didn't know a whole lot about what we might do with that, but it was kind of the spark. And we ended up doing one in Alpine for his ward. He was a bishop out there. Gosh, over the next several months, we were both about a year and a half after high school. So we went on our missions. So we had that time, like you used to have. And over that time, we got to the point where we were doing 3 or 4 firesides a week sometimes. And just really busy with it leading up to the time we left on our missions.
It's a story that can only be born out of Utah County in that, it's not the talent scout that came into the show at the bar afterwards, right? To say, hey, if you ever thought about, doing a pub tour, it is, hey, what about doing firesides? Would you be willing to do something like that? I sort of in my heart of hearts wish that you would have said something like, no, what's a fireside? Is that a part of a church? Tell me more about that and put the script on them as far as that goes. At this time, were you guys already Afterglow? You were named and like trying to do it, or was it's Joel and this is Kevin and he does the piano and I do the vocals and he plays the guitar and we do this. I'm Kevin.
We didn't have a name. It was just Joel and Kevin, and we walked out one night after the Old Dan Tucker's, and it was sunset, and we looked at each other and went, what are we going to call ourselves if we're going to go do some more of this? And it was a setting sun that was really an afterglow on the day. And we just simply said, well, let's name ourselves Afterglow.
That works. That sounds weird.
We finally got the definition of it: a glow remaining in a world where light has disappeared, a reflection of past emotion. There's a lot of people that have different afterglow meanings, but this one was more of a spiritual afterglow and kind of a reflection. So it stuck. And we were chided over the course of time for the name in different environments. But we didn't care. We just said, well, it's a spiritual afterglow. This is what Webster said it was, and this is what we're going to do.
Yeah, this is in a day and an age where you couldn't Google it and see if there were other afterglows that already existed, or like if the Urban Dictionary described urban glow or afterglow as something else that would get you in trouble with the bishop. This was like, that sounds fine. We can call it that.
We're just a couple of innocent kids from Utah County. What do we get?
Yeah, well, and to your point, you said urban glow. There was a radio DJ for some reason that was talking on one of the adult contemporary stations, and somebody said to him, I'm paraphrasing, hey, have you heard of that group Afterburner, Moonbeam, Moonglow? We got all kinds of names. I mean, like the urban glow.
There was kind of a reason, it's not like we were doing a big promotional tour, but there was kind of a reason that we needed a name. As we got closer to our mission, we were doing a fireside, and this guy from my ward who sold cars, ran a car dealership, something, he came up to us afterward. Fred Dalton, great guy.
Yep.
Came up to us and he gave us some money. And he said, you guys need to record this before you go on your missions. And I want you to take this money and do that. And if you can't, then split it up and use it on your mission. It's my donation to you. But, at that point, now we have product, like we're going to do something with it. And
Sure.
so it was on budget. It was on a shoestring. We ended up at my aunt's house. You can hear the piano bench squeak every time we play. And we basically put the Fireside program on tape. And I mean tape at the time. It was cassette tapes, of course,
Sure.
So we did that. We did another kind of version of that, was more just strictly the music side. But the Fireside program actually had us introducing each song with a spiritual thought or some kind of, hopefully a meaningful thought that way. And we ended up creating those before we left on our mission.
And at this time, was it still all just like religious songs and hymns that you knew? Or at this point, were you writing, creating, having things of your own that you could say, this is Afterglow, this isn't anything else?
Yeah, the two that came out of that, were born out of it, were Afterglow, a worship and song, and then we did another cassette that was Afterglow to Our Friends.
And we really weren't writing much then. We'd dabbled with it a little bit, but I don't think either one of us had really kind of hit any kind of a stride as far as trying to take our thoughts and put them to music. So it was
Senator, you did take a class at BYU with Ron Simpson.
with Ron Simpson. Yeah, we did a little of that. So I liked the idea of it, but I didn't even know where to begin. So we ended up using a lot of seminary music at the time. They didn't have EFY or some of the other big programs they have now, but there were a lot of seminary songs and a few hymns.
The Quest.
Yeah. Yep.
Saturday Warrior.
Yep. A little bit of that. We just used what we liked and tried to put some thoughtful things with it and turn it into a program that, go an hour and 20 minutes. And we did that a lot for several months leading up to the fall of 1980, which is when we went on our missions.
And that goal was just to leave something behind before we left. And we put it it was a little yellow card with a burst Afterglow on it. And we put it in the same cassettes, just different little labels. And we said, okay, here, Mom, here's for the family before we leave. We'll probably never, ever do this again.
Yeah, I'll never see it again.
And we get into the MTC. He goes to Japan. I go to Missouri, St. Louis. And we're there.
Basically, hold on. Missouri, basically the Japan of the United States. So very similar.
Yes.
Yeah, that's cool. No, go to Japan. That's great. I'll hold down the fort in Missouri. They'll have a very similar experience, I'm sure. I'll talk.
Well, he did end up going to Nauvoo, and he got a chance to perform there, which was kind of cool.
Okay.
Get a little bit of time in both places.
Yeah. So we left the cassettes behind, and we were in the MTC, and I get a phone call from President Joe Christensen, or not a phone call because I didn't have a phone. He summoned us to come to his office. I don't think you were there.
Nope, I don't think so either.
And he said, you have some cassette about a Plan of Salvation fireside or something. He said, I want to hear that. So I summoned my mom, and they brought some stuff over to the front desk of the MTC, and we got this package, and I took it to his office, and he listened to it, and the next day he came back and said, I want those in the MTC bookstore. I said, okay. So this little thing started to float out of the MTC bookstore with the elders and sisters across the planet. And from there, we came home, and there was some money in the account with a tax bill from the IRS.
The IRS was mad because we haven't paid any sales tax.
Oh, shoot.
I'm taxed.
Or the state, whatever. You owe this. We're like, okay. Yep. So we paid it, and said, well, we probably ought to do something with all money.
It represented a choice then, right? So we're coming home from our missions. We have at least a little bit of interest that had built up around the music, and we could take it and say, hey, have a good life, or could we do something else? And that's when we started thinking about maybe putting together an album and connecting with some of the great professionals in the area that could help us get past our limitations and do something that was maybe worth hearing,
And by this time, we were writing a little bit more. I had written on my mission a few songs, the mission song. We came back and decided to put together a compilation of some songs of some people that we knew and some that we had written, and we called it Someone Is Listening, and used a new picture of a sunset, not a cardboard cutout.
First album, yes.
But interesting enough, it found its way into distribution, and it sold enough copies that it got Deseret Book's attention in 1984. And they were looking at a way to not just do books, but to find music into their business model. And they came to us and asked us if they could do the next we would be their first artist basically of music. And so we thought about, Joel had been writing some incredible stuff, wrote a song called The Greatest Gift. And that song, plus some other stuff that we'd written, became our first Deseret Book album.
Several things to pick up along the way. I feel like you lost the real bargaining power with just handing over the cassette. I would have said, on one condition, that I get to go somewhere not Missouri. No offense. But like, yeah, you bet. We can have that in the, want me to sign over those rights? And, all negotiable.
Missed opportunity.
But then I have to know, so in my time and where I served, Cleveland, Ohio, so I had 3 roommates. One got to go to South Africa, one went to Austria, and one went to Australia, and then I went to Cleveland. All the same, basically very similar experiences.
But don't they have the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame there?
Well, sure. The one that you literally, the first things that they tell you is there's an area downtown that you're not allowed to go to, and that includes the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Under no circumstances should you ever go anywhere near. It was cool. Kirtland was in the Mission and some other great places, and it was exactly where I needed to be. However, the rule for us was like no musical instruments and no music that wasn't music from the Tabernacle Choir at that time. So to be able to write and to be able to explore those things, was that something that was unique because of the talents that you guys had been given? Or was that your just further rebellion into music that you were doing it at night when your companion was asleep, or, when you're on splits doing these opportunities and you're like, I just need to write music?
No, Joel's experience in Japan may have been completely different from mine. I was summoned to write some music for a mission president that was trying to overcome some PR issues, just making sure that elders were doing and sisters were doing what they're supposed to be doing, and getting them back out to work and those type of things. And so he wanted me to write a presentation that would go before the members while he would come and speak. And so that happened for me for almost a year.
Wow.
So that he basically commissioned me to write some music for the mission. And so I started off on that path. Eventually he pulled that back in and said, do not do any music. And that was a little test, but it was a wonderful test because it eventually sent me to Nauvoo. And,
we had it was a little interesting situation in Japan. So just before I had been there, the year before I'd been there, my mission actually created a rock band.
Oh, wow.
And sent them on a tour of the whole country outside Souvenir. Yeah. But that ended up being called Souvenir back here in the States. It was called Family.
Family.
And Brett Raymond, who plays on nearly all of our music, was the pianist for that.
Sure. Previous guest of the Cultural Hall, Brett Raymond.
There you go. Yeah. Quinn, what was his name? Quinn Coleman was the lead singer. Just had some really talented guys. And in some ways, I think that probably paved the way a bit, but also put in some precautions. Like they almost became like pop stars.
Yep.
And it was awesome. And they did some wonderful things for the church. So when I finally got a chance, it was toward the end of my mission. And my mission president said, look, let's do some firesides, just like you were doing before you came out. So let's put them in a church. Let's keep them, kind of appropriate that way and kind of a little quieter and a little more low key. And that ended up being a really cool experience. I ended up traveling with my companion at the time, who wasn't into the music at all. He just came along for the ride and did what he could to help there. And it was probably 2 or 3 months just before I came home, but most of my mission was pretty traditional. I'd sing in church, a couple of meetings. Elder Kikuchi asked me to sing for it, but most of the time it was just pretty normal missionary work for me.
Yeah, I have to ask this. Gone are those days. We hear in sort of the history of the church, and have had the opportunity to interview some folks that have had these experiences. For instance, the missionaries in Australia forming a Mormon basketball team and then ending up teaching like the Australian people how to play basketball and coaching the Olympics, right? Like that was their mission. And so BYU basketball players were called to Australia and be able to do that. A little more recent, and a story that people can hear in a previous episode of the Culture Hall, talking to Kurt Bester, who called to a park with a guitar and just played. And people would approach him and he'd say, well, funny that you should ask. Let me tell you a little bit. And so being able to do that certainly is music related. But those sort of out of the box ideas that we now tell as large tales about the formation of the church in various areas. We don't do that kind of stuff anymore, and I feel like that's kind of a miss in that we've got 85,000. We need to keep them, going the straight and narrow, and we can't deviate as far as this goes. We kind of regiment it, and so people with unique talents like the two of you with Afterglow and other talents, they don't really get the opportunity to serve in the way that maybe they could touch lives in a way that other people couldn't.
I think maybe some of that is right on point. I do know that there have been in certain areas of the country in the world actually that they have the mission presidents thinking out of the box for some of those missionaries, and I've seen even recently some new creative ideas through the social media side.
Sure.
In regards to that. So I know there's a format and a process and correlation and all things you have to do, but I think there is a little bit more of the thinking outside the box. It was ever present to us when President Beck from Brazil.
Yeah, I was serving in the Brazil, what was it, Rio de Janeiro North Mission, I think.
Rio de Janeiro, which included Copacabana, and Elder Amarin, who was the area authority in Deseret Book, send Afterglow down to do a whole myriad of stuff.
We did a tour down there. We did a couple of tours in Japan after we got home, not as missionaries,
sure.
but, we did that.
The other thing that strikes me too, this is kind of interesting. So Diana and I right now are missionaries with the Utah Lake Mission. It's a part-time thing. They asked us to do a choir.
Okay.
Actually, to run a choir with the service missionaries. We have huge numbers of service missionaries in our mission. And we just did a program for Easter. We did one for Christmas as well. And I was just thinking about what you said, Richie, because it's kind of interesting. Yes, we're always trying to be careful and make sure that we're appropriate or doing the right thing that way. But we had 3 elders. They call themselves the triple combination. It's kind of a cute little thing. 3 elders from the mission who sang on both of those 2 programs. And they took hymns in both cases and they turned them into something like I've never heard of the church before. This wasn't for sacrament meeting. It was a special program. But like the last number was a seriously jazzed up version of He Is Risen with mandolin, guitar, and 3 vocalists.
Oh, wow.
Phenomenal. Like you kind of hear it and you go, because I'm like that too. I like it when we can push a little bit outside the box in terms of what we do with church music. There's plenty of opportunity. And I was talking to one of the elders from that group, and he was worried that it was going to be too much. And then we were talking to the president, me, and he said, just, feel this. It's going to be okay. Just feel this and make sure that we do it. And he had one part, he said, I don't want this to get out of control or be perceived as something where we're doing too much. But they turned He Is Risen, which is a wonderful hymn, into this big, joyous celebration of that huge event. And it was cool. It just worked out so well in that program. And we had others that were very traditional, so a good mix. But yeah, I think it's that balance, right? You want to do things that are creative and maybe a little out of the box, but not for the purpose of pushing the envelope so much. It just is to give us another way to celebrate what we believe in.
Well, and the key is making sure that, of course, that the message is always pointing to Christ.
Sure.
And we have to be very careful about pointing the message somewhere else. So as long as, those things are happening and it's the right message to the right people under the right, I guess, circumstance.
We have a couple of rock and roll organs in our home port. Mm-hmm. And I mean, seriously, they'll get a song. They're playing it pretty straight. By the 3rd verse, we are rocking the house. You know, the roof. It's good.
It's great. It's great. Elder Packer would love us for that. You have to be brisk and go.
Well, I mean, I think it's an interesting thing in that people learn things different ways. Some people need to experience something, and some people can read and learn the thing. And I think that people can feel the Spirit different ways. And certainly we have got it on lock if you are like, let us be reverent, let us be thoughtful and mindful and all of those things. But that isn't everyone's way that they feel the Spirit to be able to have that celebratory He Is Risen or, something along those lines. Even some of the things that we've now added into the hymn book to be able to go, oh, this is celebration in its very essence. Let us celebrate. I hope that you said to those elders, listen, we can go as far as speaking in tongues, and then that's too far. That will be the point. If it gets that, we got to stop it right there because
we're ready to man.
Yeah. That's just like you're talking, and I think you might be talking too a little bit about geographics, because when you start getting out into the other parts of the world, I mean, their cultures and their celebratory way to present things is changing. And so you may have a subset of the way it's always been done, and it's been done this way in a geographical area. But boy, when you start getting into Africa and other nations of the earth, they have their own cultural style on how to deliver.
Sure.
We can learn from each other that way, I think.
Absolutely. Let's take a quick break. When we come back, I got more questions. I'm not going to tease it. We'll take a break. We'll come right back in the second block of the Cultural Hall. Let me take just a moment to tell you all about bestdjinutah.com. That is the website where you can learn all about me. Oh, sure, you probably feel like you know me, but you know me in the Cultural Hall sense. I have a DJ company, now 6 of us strong, great event hosts, MCs, and DJs that can be able to make whatever event you have coming up absolutely spectacular, and hope you will reach out to us. Now you're thinking, well, wait a minute, Richie, I don't live in Utah. Would you travel? Absolutely, I would travel. Would they travel? Absolutely, they would travel. Whatever your event is, doesn't have to be a wedding or a community event. We can do all sorts of things. I can teach you line dancing. I can dance with you. We can do partner dancing. We can do all kinds of things, but we can't do any of it if you don't hit me up. You can go to bestdjinutah.com. You can fill out the form to get more information or get a quote, and then I will get right back to you. Find out why I'm so busy and why sometimes we don't get episodes of the Cultural Hall. It's all because of bestdjinutah.com. Here in the second block of the Cultural Hall, remember you can always send us an email, contact@theculturalhall.com, just like Diana said. Now, what Joel doesn't realize is that Diana just needed an hour-long break from Joel, and she knew that if I would interview him, that she could finally get 1 hour of peace and quiet away from her husband. And so if that's what it is, I'll do it. Contact@theculturalhall.com. You can send that day, night, doesn't matter. If it is an email that might be shared on the show, be sure at the very beginning, if you do not want it shared, that before you even say hello or why you listen or anything like that, that you say, please do not share this on the show. Otherwise, I end up reading the email, and then I get to the part where you say, don't share this, and I'm not going to go back and edit it. So lead with the don't share if you don't want it shared. That's contact@theculturalhall.com. Now, gentlemen, I am a person of the arts as well, and I know that we are walking away from this, but certainly in the time that you served and then returned, and in the time that I served and returned, I think that there is a common belief of, hey, Joel, Kevin, that's cute and fun and all, but when are you guys going to get a real job that will pay the bills, that will be able to support a family? You guys get home, there's the demand and the tax bill from the profits before you left on the mission. You decide to lean headlong into it. You hesitated. You didn't ever make a full-time job out of it. Talk to me about overcoming that, because we equate it with a priesthood responsibility. I don't know that it is or that it isn't, but I want to know how you guys navigated all that.
That is a great question. When Deseret Book came in 1984, it answered our own question, because it was, okay, great, you take it. We're going to go do our businesses. And so we finished our schooling and got jobs, and we knew that this was going to be more of an avocation, and it was going to be more of a celebration for us and an outlet.
You know, we did have an interesting moment, though, several years later. I agree with Kev. We made the decision that we would work and we would provide for family and do the things that all of us have to do, and do music as much as we could in the ways we could. Mm-hmm. But we did some stuff in Nashville a few years ago, and we took a different approach. We went into the country side of things, more of a kind of a mainstream approach. And we had a moment where there were some people in the music business back there who said, would you guys consider now going on the road, making this a profession, doing this with this music you're recording? That was actually a bigger decision at that point for me.
But not under the name of Afterglow. So I was actually just talking about this to some people today. They wanted to know where the spelling of my name came from. And because I got the P-E-A-Y in there, and Sister Hinckley's a P-A-Y, and then there's a P-A-Y-E. And so we talk a little bit about that, but it was interesting. We were singing a national anthem at one of the rodeos, and the announcer from Oklahoma wanted to know
how to say
our names. Yes. And so he launches off McCausland, and he writes it down, M-C, capital C-O-S-L-Y-N, and then he writes my name, P-A-Y-E. So here's this little napkin looking at us at this crossroad, and we're going to Nashville, and we're like, oh, let's just spell it back. Yeah, let's just go with that.
Brooks and Dunn, McCausland and Peay.
Hey,
You know,
so we went down that road, and we did two country albums and had the Nashville experience with McCausland and Peay.
And I do remember when these folks were talking to us, we were lucky there. We were getting Nashville written music. We wrote some of our own, but good music. They'd really gone out and kind of scoured the writers and gotten some great stuff. And we had great players. The only limitation was us, singing and doing the things we do. So we're kind of trying to get into that mode and learn that. And I remember the guy saying, I can't remember his name, who was
Terry Choate.
Was it Terry?
Terry Choate.
He was like, we could put you guys on the road. We could make this work. But you're going to be gone for, what do you say, 2 or 3 years. You just won't be home much. You're just going to be on the road. And that moment.
Got to find a sponsor.
Right. There's a lot of business things. And I think we both kind of looked at each other. It didn't take very long. We had young families and kids and the whole thing. And it wasn't a hard decision in that way. But for me, it really did kind of underscore exactly the question you asked, Richie, the idea that if you want to make this a living, it's going to come at some kind of a cost. And that was an interesting moment to kind of consider then, when maybe there really was, I don't know, time will never tell. Was there really an opportunity or not? But they were at least pitching it that way at the time.
It was fun.
Yeah, sure.
So we got to sit on Elvis's stool in the recording studio. I mean, where Love Me Tender, we were there.
That's right.
We had all those fun musicians, the Rob Ajakises of the world that played with Garth Brooks and all these first call. Oh, what a great experience.
Yeah, we had a great time with that.
So let me ask you this, though. You guys each individually in your families have kids, yes?
Yes.
I have to imagine that there is a night, this is years ago now, where kids are screaming, wife hasn't slept very much, you haven't slept very much. There's some aspect of the job that you've committed to doing to provide for your family, to make music as a side thing, that your mind goes, why am I doing this? Why did I not chase after these other things? Or at least the slightest musing of, I wonder what my life would have been like if I would have made a different choice as far as that goes. Can you take me how you put that either voice to rest or entertain it or ever dealt with it?
I think for me it was, screaming kids, all that other stuff, but a lot of extracurricular that came with it, with the kids getting into different things and wanting to do different things. And so to me, there was never a question. I do remember, though, that what solidified my exit personally was that concert that we did where there was a group of females that were on the side with beers in their hands and asking for phone numbers. And at that point in time, up to that point, I'd only experienced the positive side of it, this, that, and the other. And I'm thinking, no, that's not real healthy for the future. So it kind of set me to rest to be able to just say, I'm going to continue to find a way with Joel to continue this in whatever way the arrows point.
That is such a good question, though, Richie. The idea that you kind of wonder what might have been, right? You kind of say, and the truth is, I don't think I'm a great enough musician that I've really missed a big opportunity. I think we've had some really cool, super opportunities to share the things that matter to us. We've been able to travel and record and do some of those things in ways that, gosh, we're so lucky that we had that. And I don't really feel any regret about a path not taken in music. We've really been blessed by the things we've been able to do. And we've had a couple of opportunities that kind of said, oh, well, there's that world over there too. And there's that fun and there's that excitement. And to Kevin's point, it never really was that big of a draw or a big pull, at least for me. I'm really happy with the direction that we ultimately have chosen to take with the music over the years.
But I'm sure cheerleading Donny Osmond on Road Up after watching his show.
We were just down there, right?
Out in Vegas. I'm like, that man and that family is phenomenal. But what he's doing currently now with what he knows and what he's experienced, that is his world. To get into that world at a late age, it's like skiing at the age of 26.
Right. It's like, for him, though, it's like a perfect blend because he grew up in the world, faced all those challenges in the world of music and entertainment. And he's this mature, seasoned, great performer as well. And now he can be everything he needs to be and wants to be in front of any group. Yeah, people love him for it.
Yep.
And then teach Sunday school on Sunday, which he is.
Exactly.
A Sunday school teacher. I always think that's so funny that it's, he's all the things. He raps. He was as big, and people, because he had become such a punchline within Mormondom, people forget that as big as Michael Jackson at one time
That's right.
was Donny Osmond. And that's not hyperbole. That's not an exaggeration. At one time, certainly Michael Jackson went on and, King of Pop and all of those things, right? That show is incredible. Just as a quick side tangent, I saw it down there, and I telling all my friends I was going to see Donny Osmond. There were plenty of Snickers to be had, but I got to the end of that show, and I just was like, that was incredible. An incredible thing.
A last sideline to that, Richie, and I don't need to take too much time for you.
Please.
We were talking to the stage manager, a female who was outside waiting, getting people ready to go in. And so Cindy and I, my wife, started a conversation with her, and I said, so how has this been? What is your background? And she simply said, I used to be an entertainer myself, but I needed to pay the bills.
Sure.
And I came, and I was lucky enough to get hooked up with the Donnie thing. And I says, well, tell us more about that. She says, it's amazing how Donnie and Deb make me feel.
Yeah.
And she said, I love these people. And she said, he pays more attention to us than anything. He's always about making people feel good. And the only way that we know how to do that is just to try the best we can to write what we write and have a conversation with you.
Let me ask you, is there one, if you had to, and I know how you're going to respond to this, so let me preface this with, this is how I don't want you to respond to this question. I don't want you to go, oh, they're all good, or, oh, it's hard to pick just one. Be brave and toughen up. If you had to say that there's one Afterglow song that it's like, this is the one that people will know, this is the Afterglow song in a nutshell, what is it in your own minds?
This was really easy for me, and Kevin might have a different answer, but kind of an interesting coincidence. Just this past couple of weeks, we reconnected this past couple of weeks with the guy who wrote this song. It's one of the very first songs we ever sang together. It's one of the very first songs we ever recorded. We were the first to record it, and it, for a time at least, was probably the best known non-hymn song in the church. Jeff Goodrich wrote a song called I Heard Him Come way back in the 1970s. Mm-hmm. We were so fortunate to get an early draft, an early copy of the first piano arrangement to that song, and fell in love with it. And we probably closed every program, just almost every program we did for 30 years with this song. So for me, this is so easy. And I give all the credit to Jeff and whatever inspiration he was getting at the time. But he wrote a beautiful song that even today, when I reintroduce it to a new generation, which I've done a few times recently, it's amazing the power and the impact this song has. So I don't mind bragging on this one because we didn't write it. Jeff did. And it's awesome. And it's probably the song that Afterglow has been best known for, in my experience anyway, for the last 45 years.
I did all that.
You can't. I'm going to make you pick a different one.
Well, the other one that comes to mind is one that he wrote that we've had so much request for over time, even in sheet music, is The Greatest Gift. And that, maybe that's because, well, I know because it's the content and the spirit that's in it, but it was also one of the first lead albums that we did with Deseret Book called The Greatest Gift. And that's hung on for a long time, and we still get requests for that.
It's amazing to me that just hearing the titles of those songs, I can be transported to times that I have heard them. And certainly that is due in popularity to the recordings that you guys had made that were sold and distributed throughout the church and those things. But it's significant to know that both in recording and hearing them, being able to listen to that kind of thing on my mission, and then also having an opportunity to have sung each of those songs and to remember a different time. I Heard Him Come was the first time I ever sang in church, and I was so nervous. And it's not the easiest song in the world, and I sang it as a solo, and just kind of remembering and being able to encompass all that. It isn't just the message, which is great. It isn't just the fact that you did it. There are so many different aspects of what you have created by just being who you felt like God wanted you to be, that you could never even understand the ripple effects of what you guys have done.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, maybe. I mean, you're right. It almost by definition, it's like we don't know what experiences people have through whatever we've done, except for once in a while we do hear from them. But Easter Sunday, we got a call from a kid we've gotten to know. Kid, he's probably 40. Guy that we know. He's a great guy, and he calls us up, and he's pretty particularly close to my wife Diana, and he said, "Hey, I'm singing in church." It reminded me of what you just said, Richie. I'm singing in church this Sunday. First time I've ever done this. Would you come listen to me?
Mm.
And in that sacrament meeting, not only did he sing a Jeff Goodrich song called "O Lord, My Redeemer," which is beautiful, but a young lady at the end of the program, we didn't know this, she sang "I Heard Him Come."
Mm.
And I thought, okay, here's just a sacrament meeting in the church, just one little place in Layton, Utah. And I looked around the room as that young lady was singing that song. And I guarantee you there were a great number of people that had never heard it before. Maybe the older people had, a lot of the young people had, and the effect was immediate. Like they never heard it before. And she did a beautiful job. And so did this guy we know on his song. But the impact that people have, the experience they have when they hear a song that gets into their heart like that, it's unpredictable, but it's remarkable. And man, that song, "I Heard It Come," for me at least, has done that to people everywhere. Mm-hmm. We've sung it in Japanese. We've sung it, I don't know if we ever did it in Portuguese, but we've sung it in other languages, and it's and in other places. And it just seems to have that power everywhere we've been.
Ever sing it in Missourian? Did we ever do it in a Missourian?
Get off my porch.
Let me ask you this about that. What is it in you guys both have to answer. So Kevin, you can take it first, so then you can look at Joel and make him answer a second. What is it, do you suppose, about music that breaks through where reading a written word or hearing a spoken word doesn't transcend into the human spirit?
I think when I listen even to the Tabernacle Choir and the orchestra at Temple Square, in my frame of mind and subset based upon where I'm at spiritually, there is certain music that just rocks my world and brings the spirit. I think for many people in the church, and that's why Heavenly Father and the Savior have given us opportunities to use our gifts in various different ways, but we're all part of a symphony, and we all have our own different sections, and those different sections, like a Kenneth Cope song or a Michael McLean song, or all of the wonderful artists that have gone out there and done their thing, but also anybody who maybe hasn't ever recorded before, who sings in a church or a meeting or whatever it is, that is their symphony. That is their opportunity to shine light and their opportunity to move people towards Christ and to be good in what they do and excellent in what they do. And so it doesn't matter what venue you're in or what you've recorded or the music. For some reason, when somebody sings it, wherever it is, depending on where people are to receive it, where their hearts are, you'll be moved. I was sitting in a meeting the other day where somebody had sang a simple hymn, and the presentation of that simple hymn was just so moving because it was a presentation of excellence. It was heartfelt, and it moved me closer to Christ. And so it's really about the one-on-one opportunities that songs can bring for us individually. And by the time we play in our own little sections, we're all under the master conductor, and we're doing the very best we can with what gifts we feel like we've been given.
Yeah, Joel, you don't get to say ditto. You're going to have to answer something.
Well, I'm going to end up saying some similar kinds of things, but let me say this. I've shared this in programs all my life. The most powerful spiritual experiences in my life, almost without exception, have come through music. And I don't know, you kind of alluded to this, Richie. I don't know why it is. And I'm always surprised when people are unmoved by music, by great music. It's like, it just doesn't speak to them sometimes, and that's okay. They've got other ways they connect. But for me, I think about it. I grew up in a musical family. My mother taught me music, and I don't mean she taught me like, sit down, I'm going to teach you music. It was just everywhere in our home. And I think about almost every kind of fundamental truth that I know about the gospel. I probably got my first spiritual impression about it by hearing a great song that explained it to me. And honestly, that's become kind of the thing that I hope for the most. It doesn't always happen. Maybe it doesn't happen as much as I'd like, or as much as I think even. But if I can write a song where I could see that happen for someone else, or if we can sing a song where I feel like maybe that's happening for somebody else, that's the very best experience for me in music. Just the idea that we're connecting to something there, and we're learning something in a way that we maybe couldn't learn any other way. And like I said, maybe not everybody feels or gets that kind of same impression, but boy, that's been a powerful part for me of my whole faith journey in life, is learning through music and hopefully the spirit that accompanies it.
No. Let's take another break. When we come back in the third block, there are 3 questions that we ask everyone who steps into the Cultural Hall. I'll ask those of you, plus whatever else I want to ask you. We'll do that coming back in the third block of the Cultural Hall. If you're listening to this and you're thinking, man, you know what? I could do a podcast. You should. Having a podcast has been one of the things that a lot of people have really sought out to do. Some just to see, can I even do this thing? I'm here to tell you that you can. And I have consulted lots of people to be able to do it. Now, some people, I consult them and they go, oh, this was way more than I ever thought it would be. And other people go, oh, you know what? A podcast isn't for me, but you helped me decide to do this thing. Whatever it is, maybe it will end up being a podcast, or maybe it'll just end up being that we have some great times together. You realize that it's time to do that in a different season of your life, or the season is now. You can reach out to me, contact@theculturalhall.com, and say podcast consultant, or my email address, Richie, RICHIET, Stedman @gmail.com. And be sure that you put podcast consultant in the subject line. Would love to talk to you and see if having a podcast would be the right thing for you. Here in the third block of the Cultural Hall, we love guest suggestions. If you need an hour break from your spouse, you can send those contact@theculturalhall.com. Or if you think, hey, you know what, I would love to be a guest, I have this to offer, you can reach out to us. We'd love to be able to field those, contact@theculturalhall.com. And sometimes I'll put those in front of, we have a Patreon group, which is people who pay to be a part of. It is a small nominal fee. I call it putting your money where your ears are. And they get to be a part of that secret but not sacred Facebook group where all the Patreon saints are hanging out. You can find out more about that at patreon.com/The Cultural Hall. And then you could be a future guest and be able to visit here. Now, gentlemen, our time is short-ish. But I have thought this multiple times as we have chatted. This isn't the way that I was thinking that this interview was going to go. But you guys are the cutest couple, go with me for a second, that I've ever had the opportunity to interview. The way you guys like sort of finish each other's sentences and like you look to the other one with this tremendous amount of respect. And I do that because I say a couple because I struggle with having serious emotion. So allow me to land this plane of serious emotion here in a second. The friendship that the two of you have and exhibit is noticeably special. I think it is a thing that in this world that lots of people, I think they wish that they could have a best friend like the two of you have in each other. I would love to know, because the story doesn't normally end that we've been doing this for 40 years and we would do it 40 more. Most of the time it was, he was a real jerk at about year 17. The money was good, so we got together again in 22 years in, and then now we are, we're pasting this on our faces. I don't find that to be true. Talk to me about the value in your best friend and being able to do this with a good person whom you have respect for.
Well, I've admired him for years. His abilities to not only temper me and mentor me, but his musicianship. He taught me chord piano very early on, and I rebelled after 12 years old, after my piano teacher, who was my great aunt, thumped me with a ruler over my hands and said I needed to fix it. And Joel came back and saved me from that whole thing and put some music back in my life where I needed to understand really about chord structure to even write a melody. And then his ability to communicate has been one that's been awe-inspiring. And so I look to him. I may have some gifts along the way, I don't know, but Joel has a great, incredible ability to temper me and to be able to edit me. And that has been a wonderful opportunity to have him by my side through this process. But there's more to it than that.
Yeah, there has to be.
There's a dot connect of eternity that happens when you come to Earth, and we just had interesting experiences in dot connects. We love each other's families. We love each other's children. We love each other's mothers. Mine just recently passed. Joel's is still with us.
They're 90 years old, and
She's been my second mom. And Joel's sisters and brothers have been my extended siblings. And so we were fortunate enough to just love each other. And that's really what it's been. But I think more importantly, I trust him. I trust him explicitly with whatever I need to share with him. And then he trusts me with whatever I write, because we've never written together. Everything we've done has been written separately.
We were talking today about walking into the studio and not having heard the other guy's songs. We're recording. We're putting them down on an album. We haven't even heard them yet. And that is a trust that we've developed over the years. That's been pretty remarkable. I would say too, I'd say that my experience with Kevin has been exactly the same way, but I know you don't like ditto. So let me add something.
Yes, please. No
because,
dittos here.
Yeah, because for me, Kevin's been steady. Like he's been always a steady friend since I've known him. And he's just that kind of person, faithful and loyal to people that he cares about. And that makes a huge difference. But even more than that, I think, is the fact that we've had experiences together, both musical, mostly musical maybe, but both musical and otherwise, that have bonded us in ways that you don't get unless you have those things. Our first children were born on the same day, which is crazy.
What?
Yeah, same day, within a few hours of each other. And our last children were born on the same day, although it was a different year. That his daughter and my youngest daughter were born on the same day. So we've had these parallels in our lives many times that sort of are interesting and coincidental and, all that.
Sure.
But when I think about what my relationship with Kevin has been about all these years, what I immediately think back on is the experiences we've shared together, the things we've done together in music primarily, but in other ways too. And that's, man, it's not that we see everything the same way. That's probably good. It's not that we have all exactly the same interests. That's probably okay too. But when it comes right down to brass tacks, we know we can't trust each other. We know that we're both trying to do the same thing with this part of our lives. And we've had so many positive reinforcing experiences along that road that it's created a friendship that I don't believe will ever be broken.
It's an enviable position to be in. Walk along with me here, because sometimes you'll hear people that are like, if we never sold a record, if we never sang a song again, the fact that we created the music, and they sort of get this tone about them. But to me, like, if you never had sold a record or had gone and performed at a thing or did a fireside of this thing, certainly you wouldn't have those experiences. But the relationship that you guys have is something that transcends all of that. I hope I'm not putting too much on it, but it is something that I just overwhelmingly have felt as you guys look to each other, as you guys, just the joy that you guys share within each other. And most people don't have that.
We've been pretty blessed for sure. It is a remarkable thing. You don't get that very often with very many people.
Yeah. So Joel, don't mess it up is where I'm going with that.
Oh, it's too late.
Yeah. If I could have, trust me, he says, I would have ruined this a long time ago. There are 3 questions that we ask everyone who steps into the Cultural Hall. Let me ask those of you now. We can go, we'll go Joel first on the first one, and then Kevin, you can go first on the second one, and then whoever wants to on the third one. The first question is do you have a calling right now? And if so, what is it?
Yeah. Up until a little bit later this evening, at least, we're meeting with our mission president. So Diana and I currently serve as service missionaries in the Layton mission.
Okay.
And we have the great privilege of working with those service missionaries in a choir and in their musical things that they do. And that's been great. We've been doing it for about a year and a half. It's a great calling.
Kevin?
I currently serve in a branch presidency at IMC Hospital. So we're at 53rd South in Salt Lake City. in that branch, and we minister to hospital rooms. And that's an outtake of 6 years prior of that, the primary children's hospital, and presiding at primaries. And so we've been in hospitals now, Cindy and I, for 13 years as service missionaries. And for some reason, we've learned how to wash our hands and ask for permissions and be nice to people. And but we've had some spiritual deep dives. We spend a lot of time with people who are suffering and hurting and getting ready to prepare to meet their Savior in many cases.
Yeah, a unique, but maybe just I don't have the temperament for it. It would be too hard for me, as people are like, I'm about to pass. I'm like, now you have to console me because I take too much of that on to be even killed and tempered to be able to be with people at their worst. No one's going to the hospital because they're like, what a great day. I think I might just go to the hospital today is the literal worst of the worst. And to be able to minister to those, that's significant. Second question. So this one is going to go to you first, Kevin. If you could pick a calling for yourself, either one that exists or make one up, what would you pick?
Whoa, that's a good.
Be careful. You might get it.
Yeah.
Realistically, I've been so hospitalized in that service for a while. Going back to the home ward, I think I probably ought to go that direction. I think I would enjoy gospel doctrine, or I would enjoy teaching priesthood again.
All right, Joel.
So I'm going to go back to one I actually had. When Diana and I got married, it's about 11 years ago now.
Congratulations.
We moved to this ward, and it's been a wonderful ward, just a great neighborhood of great people, and we really enjoyed it. But the first calling I got, maybe it was the second one, when we got to this ward, was they asked me to be the primary chorister.
Okay.
And I was terrified. And I don't know why, because music is something I love, but I couldn't anticipate or imagine how I was going to connect with 4-year-olds and 5-year-olds and teach them what I feel about music. And it took me a while for sure. But some of the experiences we ended up writing songs with the kids.
Oh, wow.
And then Kevin and I put them on an album a few years later. So one half of one of our albums is all original primary songs that my kids came to the studio and sang. And I can't say that I've enjoyed a calling ever in my life as much as that one.
I love the idea of you got 2 primary kids and you're like, the first one will sing The Greatest Gift. He's a 4-year-old. And then I Heard Him Come will be the other.
All my primary kids. All my primary kids are going on missions now, which is making me feel old, but it's an awesome thing.
What I'm loving is This Little Light of Mine, man, with the ukulele.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. You used to do that one all the time at primaries, and now it's in there. We're back to the ukulele.
Legal, and you could technically, with the handbook, have a ukulele in your sacrament meeting. So
that's right. That's right.
Yeah, you're right. I love that one.
Yep.
Let me know when you decide to do that, when you get back to the home ward after you've been released and you're like, this first Sunday, the ukulele, This Little Light of Mine, I'll be there front row.
It worked really well at primary children's. It's not working so well at IMC.
Yeah, really. We actually sang This Little Light of Mine in our sacrament meeting about a month ago. And I just got to say, we've got some work to do.
Sure.
We were not exuding the spirit of that song. We were kind of wondering if it was okay to sing it.
I don't know what the is it a 3/4 or 4/4? What is This Little Light of Mine?
It's however you sing it in whatever culture.
That's right.
I just imagine though that the person is trying to do the 5 and they're just moving their arm.
Stay with me, people.
Come on. I know no one is looking right now, but I'm moving my arm. Look up from your book. Look up.
Yeah, we have definite problems with rhythm, but we got there.
Yeah. I got this is a side tangent. I don't think that I've shared this here in the Cultural Hall, so hopefully people enjoy this very, very quickly. I got called to fill in to be the chorister, and it was not the present chorister who asked me if I could fill in. It was someone within the bishopric. They said, hey, would you be willing to fill in and lead the music? And I said, why? And they said, why are we asking you to do it? And I said, no one follows the chorister.
But you care, right?
We just need to have someone there. I can be there. And so I joke you not, up in front of everyone, I started doing melikiliki maka, arms to the side. And it would have been the most distracting thing ever to come from up on the around the pulpit from the church if anyone would have watched, but not a single soul batted an eye, blinked, or chuckles because no one was looking. And here's the thing. It matters so much. If you lead and follow music, it matters so much. We are trained in our particular ward not to value that. Anyway, side tangent, but very funny. I was like, never all over the board. Here we go. Jazz fingers across the whole thing. All right. Before we ask the final question, I would to ask you guys, touring now, what's going on with you? Where can people best support the two of you guys or see you guys, or give me all that? Give me all the biz stuff.
Yeah, there's a few places. We started a podcast several months ago called Stories and Songs with Afterglow.
Okay.
And that's fun. We've got 30 episodes that have been published.
31 historical documentation of the songs. We're going to go.
So is that like the greatest gift? The greatest gift, it was a balmy July evening. You remember? Yes, I do. Is it that kind of thing?
Yeah.
Yeah, we hope it's a little bit more than just the history, but kind of, what we were experiencing or going through at the time. So we're not very good at all of this promotional, the kind of new age stuff, but we do have a YouTube channel where we post some videos. We've got our website, Afterglow Music. We do, the Facebook posts every now and then, and we're still active. Our last album was a year ago. We're writing. I wrote a song for Easter. We're doing things because we like to do them. Mm-hmm. And when we get enough of them written, then we sit down and put an album together. And it might take us a year or 2 or 5 to get there each time now, instead of releasing an album every year like we did at the beginning. But in some ways, for me at least, that ability to sort of experience things again through music, to have an experience that kind of hits me, and then I think, wow, there's a song there, and sit down and try to put that together. That's the cool part of what we're doing now. We don't rely on it for anything except for our own satisfaction and hopefully something good for somebody else.
And when we go to the studio, it's really a retread of the old days with the Brett Raymonds and the Michael Dowdells, and watching them work again, and the engineers. So to go back into the studio and to be able to do it raw and create has just been a gift. It's just been fun. And so we're going to try and perpetuate it as long as we can until, we can't either spiel their ear. Nobody wants to listen, but there's still a few people that are downloading and still listening along.
That's great. It's incredible. I think that's awesome. I wish to ask you this as well. Was there ever a time you were like, nah, forget it, we're done, I don't want to, let's close up shop? Any time that it was just like, it's over, I'm not doing this anymore?
I think there was a time when we kind of ran out of things to do. Uh-huh. We had recorded hymns, we had written a bunch of material, we'd done Christmas, we'd been to London, we went to Nashville, Brazil, Japan, and there was a pause moment there where we just kind of ran out of things to do, and then all of a sudden there was a rebirth with an album called Mercyville that we put up and recorded, and that was a little bit of an outgrowth of some of the humanitarian stuff that I'd been working on with one of the directors of the church just for fun. I had a writing stint there, and he and I did a few firesides because he wanted to tell the story of the emergency response stuff. And so I wrote a few songs to wrap it around him. He's since retired, those things. And then we started some of that conversion of those songs and remodified them a little bit. Joel wrote some new stuff, and we found a new song called Mercyville, and Mercyville album was born. And then from there, it just kind of breathed a little bit of new life.
Yeah, I think so. It was a little bit of, even from a personal standpoint. I've never gone through a faith crisis where I wonder if the church is true or any of that sort of thing, but I needed a turn. And I think Mercyville was like that for me in some ways. Our friends who called and offered that song to us, that was rare for us. And that song and its message was just right. It was perfect. And I think it opened up the door a little bit for me again. I've probably written more since that time than I had for 5 or 10 years prior to that.
Oh, did you guys submit any hymns for the new hymnal?
Yeah. I submitted some of those primary songs that I wrote with my kids. Unfortunately, I don't think any of them were going to get accepted.
Yeah,
but there's one song I'll just mention briefly. There's a song called I Can Know. And the song is basically based on the idea that even our youngest kids can have the Spirit enough to help them know certain things, to
build the basic blocks of their foundation in a testimony. And the kids wrote that song with me. I walked in one day and said, this is a song this is a concept I want to talk about. And I said, what would you say in a song like that? And I started writing on the board. And I filled the board up with all their suggestions in about 30 seconds and went home and wrote the song. And we did that song with our primary, 3 years running in the primary program. And parents couldn't get through it. Everybody would break down in tears every time they heard their kids singing about their own emerging testimonies. And that was pretty powerful.
And then you brought them into the studio.
Yeah. Well, we recorded my primary kids on 2 or 3 of the songs.
All right. Well, I'll talk to him. I can make it get in there. Come on, guys. Get Afterglow in. Perfect. The last question we ask everyone, we ask you to interpret it however you may. And I don't care who goes first on this one, but you guys both have to answer the question. The question is, what is your favorite part of your faith?
I'll start. Give Kevin a moment to think about that. If there's one theme that I've kind of explored in my music more than anything else, it's not just the atonement of Jesus Christ, not just the universality of that, like it's for everyone, like he died and suffered and did all this for everyone, but the individuality of it, that he did it for me. And if there's doubts that I've ever had in my life about my faith, it's been whether or not I was worthy to get those blessings, like I could actually qualify for that, all the stuff he promises. And I thought, always easy to believe in it and always easy to believe that other people could get it, but believing it for myself and really, really feeling that to my core. I bet I've written 10 songs that have explored that one way or another. And so for me, that's probably the single most powerful element of faith in my life, is coming to that faith and belief that all the things he promises could apply to me too, if I'm willing to do what I need to do.
Yeah. All right, Kevin, take us home.
Mine's probably a multiple part answer. The enabling and redemptive aspects of the atonement and coming closer to him through many different elements. And especially I've fallen in love with 1 Peter 4 about suffering. And we're just going to have to go through things in order to understand a little bit more when we see him again. And we have that interview, each of us. The second part of it, I know that he speaks through prophets. I have a testimony that the restoration of the gospel of Jesus Christ is here, and it was through a small boy of 14 years old. And that was solidified to me because I spent 8 months in Nauvoo walking those streets. I spent time giving tours in the Carthage jail, and I spent time in the cultural hall and sitting under light poles and weeding the baptismal font at the Nauvoo temple and the stairwell cases and hauling the hay on the farm and all things associated with that time element of the restoration. And I don't think you could dynamite it out of me in regards to the love that Hiram and Joseph had for each other and the love that Joseph had for Hiram in that situation, and just all of the things that came from the martyrdom of those two and the restoration of God's called prophet in the latter day, and that priesthood authority now that is residing now with President Nelson. So prophets are key. They point the way to Christ and they help us. And as Sherry Dew has said, who we love and adore, because we spent so much time with her through the Deseret Book experience, that prophets do see around corners. And so I know the Lord uses prophets to speak to us. And so I have a testimony of that. And I come closer to my Savior through the teachings of prophets and apostles.
Well, gentlemen, you can find in the show notes links to all of the different songs and albums, websites, YouTube, their podcast. You can find all of that in the show notes for this episode. And you can actually see their cute faces on our YouTube channel as well. You can find and see how it is exactly what I said. They will look to each other when the other is answering, and they're the most loving, supporting people. It makes me sick and really sad that I don't have a best friend. Whatever. I hope that this episode has nourished and strengthened your body, that if you're not healthy enough to listen this week, that you'll be healthy enough to listen next week, and that when the time comes, you will be able to travel home in safety. In the meantime, Chris at Alpine Lakes Travel, Debbie Wanless, Chocolate Cake Bites Podcast, and the Tiger, with a U, will be saving a seat for you on the back row of the Cultural Hall.
Save me a seat, it's sure to be neat. On the back row, we really